Okay, thanks everyone for joining. Today's guest is Josh Somerville from sunny Brisbane. And we have been working together for almost a year now. I thought his content he's also posting on LinkedIn is very interesting for our community of users. So I've invited him to join us and share some of the tips and tricks he's looking at when optimizing Facebook and Google Ads. Thanks very much for joining. Over to you, Josh.
Thank you so much, Matthias, and really appreciate you having me on the webinar and looking forward to taking everyone through what I've been doing and what my agency's been doing over the past couple of years as far as tracking is concerned, especially given all of the privacy stuff that's going on and how we're sort of tackling tracking this year and beyond. So just a bit of, so I'm just trying to go forward here. Bit of background on myself. So I've spent the last 11 years in various media buying positions for small to large size agencies, both locally here in Australia where I live, and also North America where I was doing some traveling at the time. More recently, I've spent the last 3 years building Farsiight, which is a specialist agency that I've founded with my brother, despite sort of better advice from some family and friends. But we're really focused on driving growth for online businesses. So that's e-commerce, online marketplaces, and software companies. And we only do performance marketing and creative for this subset of the market. So we're sort of hyper specialized in that sense. So we're sort of 4 years into our journey, or sort of 3.5 for a team of 20. And yeah, we're really focused on just those channels. So a bit of an agenda for today. We're going to be focusing on 2 of the major ad platforms. So that's Google Ads and Facebook Ads. Starting with Google Ads, we're going to be looking at Google Ads conversion tracking versus Google Analytics goals and my recommendation there. Talking about offline conversion tracking and the depreciation of the third-party cookie and some of the different features that are becoming available both through Google Ads and also Google Analytics to try and make sure that we're continuing to measure and track conversions. Then we're moving over to Facebook Ads. So just what we've observed as an agency sort of post iOS 14.5, some of the recommendations that I have off the back of that, and then also talking about why we think ROAS is a bit of a dead metric, and then really zooming out of this. So outside of sort of tracking on Google Ads and Facebook Ads, really looking at the bigger picture and starting to look at a metric called MER, which is marketing efficiency ratio, which we'll touch more on. Whoa.
Okay, that's my double slide in that case. Right, okay. Just 2 minutes on us, Windsor.ai. My name is Matthias, and what we do is we provide the data pipelines for data-driven marketers. So we provide integrations into your BI, Google Sheets, or your data warehouse for all your marketing data. The second slide here is how the Google Ads versus Facebook Ads dashboard looks like. It's on our template gallery. If you want to check it out, you can go to our website, Windsor.ai, and you will find the template gallery. Yeah.
So yeah, we've been using Windsor AI as an agency, and it's been really great at sort of aggregating data across multiple ad platforms. So we can kind of provide some comprehensive reporting to clients where we're not just looking at singular ad platforms, we're kind of bringing that data together to create some more impactful reporting. So Windsor's been great at helping us do that. So I'm having a bit of issues with the way this slideshow is working, but we'll crack on. So I'm sure this will probably resonate with a lot of people, but over the last sort of couple of years, it's very much felt like between sort of iOS 14.5, rising ad costs, the depreciation of the third-party cookie, which is very much still in progress. From an advertiser's perspective and also like a marketing perspective, it has felt like we're kind of dodging bullets to try and make sure that we're still able to maintain our tracking and measurement. So my goal today is to really have everyone leaving feeling a little bit more in control as to what is available, in the major ad platforms to really try and help make sure that we're continuing to have clean and accurate data, or at least to the best of the ability. So just want to start by sort of talking about why I'm personally passionate about tracking. So really, to boil it down, it's just a competitive edge for my agency. So by focusing on making sure that we're always on the cutting edge of what measurement solutions there are for our partners, it ultimately will lead to better performance, because as marketers, it's the most important factor. Everything that we do from like a media buying perspective comes back to the signals that we're receiving, which is ultimately through the tracking. So first and foremost, you need to have really, really good foundations, which starts with tracking before you can become a really good media buyer. And that's why I'm passionate about this tracking conversation. And before I get into all the slides, I just want to make it clear, and I think we all probably know this as marketers, but there really is no silver bullet to tracking.
Yeah.
So there is no silver bullet to tracking, measurement, and attribution. But really, it's all about just making sure that you're gathering the right signals to analyze how each channel that you're investing in, whether it's for yourself or for your clients, are impacting the business. So it's kind of like looking at the ad platforms, looking at external business metrics to kind of blend the two together, just to make sure that when you're distributing budget, you're putting it in the right places. So this is where I believe the current issues are with ad platform tracking. And I'm going to touch on these first because a lot of the other slides kind of come back and talk about some of these issues. So first and foremost, the biggest one is definitely the privacy laws changing in favor of consumers. So between iOS 14.5 and the third-party cookie depreciating, it is making tracking and measurement a lot harder for advertisers, which is definitely causing some issues, which we'll talk more of. We've got ad platforms are greedy. So if you're running, say, Facebook ads, Pinterest ads, Snapchat ads, Google ads, let's just say an example that someone touched every one of those ads within the attribution window set by those ad platforms, then it's going to technically say that every single ad platform had one sale, where we know that that's not the case. There was really only one sale on the back end. So if you were just honing in on those ad platforms, it looks like, yeah, you've had 4 sales. You actually haven't. It's just because that user's gone through every single ad platform that's led to a conversion on the back end. So how do we make decisions as marketers to make sure that we're not just honing in on singular ad platforms and we're looking at the bigger picture to make these decisions? You then got missed attribution for cross-device conversions. There are ways around this at the moment, but it's still not perfect. But let's say you started your journey on a mobile device, you clicked on an ad, but then you later converted on a desktop. How do you kind of bring that back together to know that it was originally that mobile? And then this is kind of just an ongoing one, but there is varying attribution models between all ad platforms. So as an example, we've got Facebook now, which is 7-day click, 1-day view. Google 30-day, Pinterest 30-day, and also 30 view. So it's not that this is necessarily wrong. Every ad platform is different, and the way that consumers' behavior is on each of these ad platforms is different. So you should be looking at different attribution models based on the ad platform, but it's very hard to compare apples with apples when this is the case. So again, it's about trying to come up with a better methodology to assess performance, which we'll touch on. But starting with Google Ads, this is one thing I'm definitely passionate about. So we review and audit a lot of Google Ads accounts when we're looking to work with certain partners. And what we see is that a lot of advertisers choose to import goals from Google Analytics into Google Ads. And the issue with that is based on the way that Google Analytics by default attributes conversions, which is by last click. So as an example, if, and just moving forward, if you were to do a search on Google, you clicked on a Google ad, you got distracted in your session, you bounced, and then you saw a Pinterest ad and you clicked on that Pinterest ad, then went to the website and purchased. If you're using Google Analytics goals, it would give attribution to Pinterest within Google Analytics, but also within Google Ads, it wouldn't get any attribution based on the way that Google Analytics by default gives attribution, which is simply to the last channel that wasn't direct that led to that conversion. So this is a big issue because arguably this click here was the most important. It got the user to the website in the first place, and Pinterest, let's just call this a retargeting ad, was simply just retargeting to the user to get them back to the website and purchase. But by using Google Analytics goals, you are missing out on attribution. And what might happen is over time, you've got a keyword that's responsible for driving a lot of sales on the back end, but you don't have any conversions in the ad platform. And you simply switch that keyword off because as a marketer, you think it's not generating any return. And that's where the issue lies with Google Analytics tracking. So my recommendation is very much to use Google Ads native conversion tracking. The benefit here is that Google, because it is native to Google Ads, they know when the ad click occurred. So again, using this same example, when someone did end up purchasing, it will give attribution back to Google Ads. And therefore, there's a lot of benefits that come with that. So the benefits that really come with that are like there's more scaling opportunities. So again, if you're getting more signals on keywords or channels that are responsible for that top of funnel traffic, it means that you can continue to invest in them because you know they're providing value on the back end. Also, in this year and even last year, we're starting to take advantage of Google's automated bidding a lot more frequently. It's become a lot more effective. So automated bidding strategies like target CPA or target ROAS, they are working more effectively. So by having Google Ads conversion tracking set up and receiving more signals, you're essentially giving their machine learning more signals to play with. And it's going to make these automated bidding strategies work more effectively for you in the business. And lastly, there is a metric called view-through conversions. And by using Google Analytics, you simply can't record view-through conversions. And what that is, that's an impression-based conversion. So let's say you're investing in top-of-funnel display. You've got that visual creative. If someone saw that creative, didn't click on it, but then went to say organic and researched the brand, they wanted to check the social proof, they went to the website and converted, using Google Analytics, you can't actually see that view-through conversion in the ad platform. But using Google Ads, you can. And it's just another way to view how like the performance of your ads is resulting on the back end. So that's a benefit of Google Ads conversion tracking. It's worth mentioning what the only downside is, and that's that it's now going to result in some duplicate conversions. So again, if you're using Facebook and Pinterest and one user clicked on all three ads, it's likely that all three platforms are going to report a conversion. The only caveat I'll mention is that you can still measure last click if that's what you're interested in Google Analytics platform. Or what you can do is run the two conversion actions in Google Ads. You simply just don't include the Google Analytics goal in conversion columns, but you're still observing how that's going over time. If you're interested in last click attribution, but very much recommend using Google Ads conversion tracking. The next slide is on offline conversion tracking, and this is particularly important. At Farsiight, we work with a lot of software companies, and it's great for software companies. So typically, it allows you to measure offline events. So events such as like marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads, and deals closed. Typically, these are events that, say, in software companies, these happen at an inside sales team. So as an example, we click on an ad, I go to the website, SaaS businesses will have like a free quote or free demo or free trial. But what happens after someone's filled that out? It'll go to the sales team. The sales team will try and take them through the journey to make them a customer. And all these events like, sales qualified lead and deal closed are very, very important to understand what the actual effect of Google Ads was. And yes, you could just go into your CRM and analyze how, Google Ads traffic resulted in these conversions. But unless you use offline conversion tracking, there's no way to pull that data back into Google Ads to analyze which keywords are resulting in new customers or sales qualified leads, which keywords are just resulting in a lot of leads, but not converting to deals closed. So it's a real benefit to companies that have inside sales teams. And ultimately, the benefits of offline conversion tracking is a decrease in your customer acquisition cost, because what you can do as marketers is, and we find this a lot when we install offline conversion tracking, there's some keywords that are really great at generating a lot of leads, but they just never convert to customers. So what you can do is simply turn those keywords off instead of continuing to invest in them if you don't have this tracking set up, and reinvest that money on keywords that drive a better customer acquisition cost. So OCT has been really incredible at helping us further analyze the next steps in the buyer's journey that typically pre-offline conversion tracking, it's really just been a liaising with, the partner or the inside sales team or the CRM to go, right, from the Google Ads traffic, this is how many resulted in actual customers. But it's all about pulling that back into Google Ads. And just to give a quick overview of how that's set up without getting too technical, there's a thing called a G-CLID, and you can enable this in your settings on Google Ads. And a G-CLID is essentially like 120 character long that goes into the URL. So when someone clicks on a Google Ads, it's just an identifier which Google can kind of connect to the keyword, the demographic, and all the other signals that you receive from Google Ads. That G-CLID, there would be, say, a form on the website. Again, let's use the SaaS example. Someone's filling out a free demo form. In that form, there's a hidden field. And what that hidden field is for the gclid. So the gclid would automatically get pushed through a JavaScript from the URL into the form. And then when someone submits that form, it gets pushed into someone's CRM or lead flow software. So next to their contact, it would also have a gclid variable. And that's how you can start to measure and pull back those events, because when someone goes from, say, a lead in, and then the sales teams change it to qualified lead, and then someone changed it to deal closed, these are all timestamped, and we can pull all of this back in both automatically or manually, depending on your method. I definitely recommend automatically, just so you can start to review the data in more real time and really start to analyze the overall efficiency of the marketing, not just generating leads, which is typically where it stopped at in previous years. So OCT is a really good tool. Next is talking about the depreciation of the third-party cookies. So, I mean, this is something that's already happened on Safari and Mozilla, and it keeps getting kicked down the road, like the can keeps getting kicked down the road on Chrome, but it's set to happen around the end of 2023. But for those that don't know what a third-party cookie is, it's simply a file that's stored on your browser from a domain other than the one that you're visiting. And that's where kind of the issue is as far as privacy, because there's other domains apart from the one that you're visiting. It's kind of that cross domain that's dropping cookies on your browser to analyze how you're behaving as you surf through the web. So this is typically used by advertisers, ad platforms, and publishers for measurement, attribution, personalization, and retargeting, which is ultimately providing consumers with a better user experience. But consumers are becoming more and more familiar with how, all of these three, so the advertisers, ad platforms, and publishers, are using their data. And this is why we're seeing things like iOS 14.5 and depreciation of third-party cookies, because consumers are now expecting more from how people are using their data. So essentially, why should you care? I mean, 83% is the share of marketers that are reliant on third-party cookies, and $22 billion is spent on third-party audience data. So, I mean, we are heavily reliant on third-party cookies at the moment. So it's all about trying to understand, what does the next ecosystem look like, and how can I prepare through different tracking and measurement means to make sure that you're kind of future-proofing your marketing. So what I've been, and the research that I've done, I'm very much still kind of a learning progress as far as third-party cookies, but from all my research, it seems as though right now with a third-party cookie, it's very much the way that these ad platforms are analyzing you as an individual is moving towards more of a cohort-based or audience-based approach instead of individual sort of identifiers that personally are identifiable to you. So it's all about putting you into an audience of people that share similar behaviors on the web. That doesn't get shared with third party. It simply just stays on your device. And then that's how advertisers are going to be able to start to advertise to you as more of an audience that shares similar behaviors. Now, as far as like looking at these ad platforms and what we can do to make sure that we're continuing to get good measurement through these platforms, is Google's released a new feature called enhanced conversion tracking. So you can now upgrade your Google Ads conversion tracking to enhanced conversion tracking. And I guess why they're doing this, we've kind of just touched on it, but there is rising expectations of privacy, which is impacting the traditional measurement solutions. And what we're going to continue to see over the next few years, and we're already seeing this particularly on Facebook ads, is an increase in modeled conversions. So there's two types of conversions that typically occur. It's the observed conversions, which the ad platforms, like, we know this is a conversion that's because of this click. And then there are modeled conversions, which is using sort of statistical modeling, incrementality, and a number of different means to understand, like, we think there's a probability that this conversion happened because of this ad click. And in a lot of cases, what we're seeing, particularly on Facebook, and I will touch on this, is that there are a lot of conversions that are happening in these ad platforms that aren't actually happening to the businesses. So it's really, it's about understanding how and when these occur. And ultimately, by getting this sort of tracking in place, the more data that we can feed these platforms, the better it's going to get at modeling conversions. And looking ahead, we're definitely moving to a world where there's going to be a lot more modeling conversions for users that opt out of, say, iOS 14 or don't allow the third-party cookie when they're browsing through the web. So as far as what this all means, so insofar as enhanced conversion tracking, so it simply enables more accurate measurement by collecting first-party data from your conversion or sales pages and matching it against Google's logged in data. So if you are a Gmail user and you're logged in on your mobile device and your computer, and then I went and purchased, say, a pair of running shoes, and that email address would get matched against Google's logged in data, and we can then capture a conversion. So an example here is that a user clicks on an ad, a user purchases, that conversion tag captures the email and hashes the data, and then that email is matched against data and a conversion is reported. So it's definitely going to help make sure that not just that we start to keep track of these observed conversions, but also the benefit is that we can start to measure more accurately these cross-device conversions that are occurring. So yeah, just to kind of summarize on the benefits, it's got continue to collect the observed conversions. As I mentioned, improving cross-device conversion attribution. The third is conversion modeling will become more effective because you're simply giving this conversion action more signals. And on the flip side, automated bidding will also be more effective. So if you're using max conversions, max conversion value, all that sort of thing, by getting more signals, these will become more effective. So I'm having issues moving to the next slide. There we go. The other feature that's come out or platform that's kind of upgraded from Universal Analytics to Google Analytics 4 is definitely going to help with the depreciation of the third-party cookie. So in Google's words, GA4 is kind of a privacy-centric platform that's designed to work with or without cookies. So I mean, when I saw that Google Analytics had an upgraded version, my first thoughts were like, oh no, like it's taken me so many years to get familiar with all the different reports and how to make sure that I know how to analyze Google Analytics 4 to troubleshoot issues and also find opportunities. So seeing a brand new platform with a whole new skin definitely concerned me. But having now done the research and understood why Google's kind of moving towards Google Analytics 4, a big reason is definitely to track users in a different way. So Google Analytics 4 relies on first-party cookies and uses machine learning to fill in gaps in data and measurement through statistical modeling again. So for users that do opt out, there is going to be that machine learning to sort of bridge the gap there. So as far as like what my recommendation is at the moment, I definitely recommend setting this up if you haven't already. It doesn't mean that you have to use this as the primary tool for your tracking and your analytics, but certainly if you can set it up now, you're just going to be collecting data in that property. And what that's going to do is make sure that the modeling will become stronger and stronger and more impactful in the future when there might be a case where Universal Analytics gets sunsetted and we have to use GA4 moving forward. So definitely recommend getting that set up in the meantime and getting the signals now. That's everything I've got on the Google Ads side. So moving to Facebook ads, the first thing I want to touch on is sort of post iOS 14.5 observations. So I'm sure we're probably all familiar with what happened sort of post iOS 14.5 with users now getting the ability to sort of opt out of tracking. And it's obviously had a pretty profound effect on Facebook ad platform in general. So what we've noticed since this has happened and how this has impacted advertisers in general is there is an over and under reporting of conversions, whether that's leads or sales. We're noticing in any given week, sometimes Facebook will way over report on conversions that are actually occurring when you kind of cross compare that with what you're seeing in Shopify or other ways that you measure your business conversions. And there's some instances where this is just as bad, where it underreports. And that poses a pretty big issue where you might start to pull back on ad spend when really you should be investing more. There is increased modeling, and this is certainly contributing to the over-reporting, particularly on Apple devices. We're seeing a lot of modeled conversions. Obviously, shorter attribution model windows, changing from 28 days to 7 days. There are less interest audiences to choose from. And this is something that's happening sort of every month. We're just seeing more and more interest audiences sort of fade away, which is giving us less options to choose from insofar as where we place ads in front of who. The retargeting buckets have become way smaller just due to the fact that we're not receiving as many signals for the people that have opted out. So retargeting has become less effective. Lookalike audiences are not as powerful as they once were either. So that was typically the best performing audience. You would upload your customer list. You could use Facebook's Pixel to do a lookalike audience. There were many different options, but these lookalike audiences are simply just not as powerful as they once were. And what we're seeing from a performance perspective across the board for our partners is that CPMs are rising. and performance has ultimately worsened on Facebook ads. So what I've got here is a slide that shows sort of CPMs month on month for our partners. So we're kind of having a look at sort of 8 to 10 different partners. And you can see there is a steady incline in CPMs. So I've kind of provided an example here. Client A is up 64% year on year, 99% year on year, 20%, 93%, and 102%, which is a pretty terrifying statistic when you consider that not only are CPMs becoming more expensive and ad costs are rising, but the performance ultimately on the platform isn't quite as strong as it used to be. So yeah, it's definitely a very interesting time in Facebook ads. And we're seeing a lot of brands start to look at other platforms to diversify their channel mix, essentially, to mitigate that risk that we're currently seeing with Facebook ads. So obviously TikTok is definitely a popular channel at the moment. Brands are testing Pinterest, Snapchat, Reddit. There's a whole lot going on in the background to make sure that we're diversifying where that channel mix is going. So these are some of the recommendations that I have off the back of it, at least from the tests that we've been doing for our brands. So my first recommendation is lean into Facebook's automation. So what we find to try and combat the CPMs rising is that by using campaign budget optimization and dynamic creatives, that is resulting in cheaper cost per 1,000 impressions on those ad sets. So for those unaware, CBO is you're setting a budget at the campaign level instead of the ad set level. And then Facebook will decide where to place that budget based on the performance objective. So let's say you were using conversions, it would start to place more budget based on, where those conversions were happening in the ad sets that you're running. And then dynamic creatives are in an ad. Instead of having 4 different ads which had different images, you would have one ad running and 4 images placed in the one ad. And essentially what you're doing is you're leaning into Facebook's automation and letting them decide which image creative to place ads in front of who at what time. And we're seeing that we're getting a lot cheaper CPMs by doing this. Consolidating audience is definitely a recommendation, both in top, middle, and even bottom of funnel if you're running that structure. So what we're seeing is that, back in the day, we might run an ad set that had one single interest. It might be camping, and that's the interest we go after. But because the interests are shrinking, then by using these single interest or single lookalikes is just not as effective as it once was. And it's definitely, as of Facebook's recommendation as well, is to start to pull in interests or lookalike audiences that kind of share common themes and push that into one ad set and use that as your targeting to kind of create more people in one ad set. We've also been having a lot of success with broader audiences. So that would be like, right, I know that the person that buys from me or the avatar is someone who's a female aged 18 to 35. That is simply the targeting that we've been having success with on Facebook, using automatic placements, making sure that we're uploading the right creative. And that's really the point there, is that like the creative is the single most important piece of Facebook. And that's how you self-segment your audience, not necessarily through the targeting anymore. It's through the actual piece of creative that you're using. So try broad audiences if you haven't, because we're definitely having success with that. And then moving to sort of middle and bottom of funnel audiences, back in the day, what we typically would do is run, Instagram engagement, Facebook engagement, video views, kind of all by itself. We're now looping that all into one. And same with retargeting. We might have a separate ad set for anyone who's added to cart but didn't purchase, a separate ad set for anyone who's been to the website but didn't purchase, which we'd exclude add to cart. We're now just consolidating all of this with different look back windows and using that as an ad set for middle and bottom of funnel. The third recommendation is installing CAPI or conversion API. So traditionally, it's all been done tracking through Facebook's Pixel. They've now come out with another server-side solution, which is called Conversion API. So it's a tracking tool that really enables advertisers to share customer actions from their servers directly to Facebook. So really, again, protecting consumers' data, as opposed to the pixel tracking traditionally. So at the moment, CAPI is working alongside the Facebook Pixel, really to help improve performance and measurement and really bring back the data collection for Facebook ad campaigns. So if you haven't set up CAPI, if you're using Shopify, it's a very, very easy task to do. It can be done within 5 minutes. If you've got like an own custom e-commerce store or a website, it can be a bit more difficult, but there's a lot of documentation that Facebook's now got that will help with installing Conversion API. And lastly, it's importing offline conversions. So similar to what I was talking about with Google Ads, where you're importing conversions that are happening offline, you can also do this with Facebook ads. And it might not necessarily be an offline conversion, but let's, as an example, say you had an e-commerce store, there's purchases happening. You can download your customer list or your order history. You slightly reformat it so Facebook can understand what you're uploading, and you upload that to Facebook. And what you're going to get is another column called offline conversions. And you can start to match that against the conversions that Facebook's reporting. And what you'll find is quite often there is a mismatch there. You might find that more conversions are happening when you import your offline conversions, simply because Facebook doesn't have the signals that they used to have with people that have opted out of iOS 14.5. So it's not to say that you would only use offline conversion tracking to use to adjust budgets and do media buying, but it's just another layer that you can add on to, I guess, your methodology and process when you're doing your media buying, to kind of cross compare what's Facebook telling me, what's offline conversion telling me, and then ultimately what are some other things that I can look at to determine the success of these ad platforms. I think where people have fallen wrong in the past is that they're just solely focused on one platform, and they're looking at Facebook ads. What does Facebook ads tell me? And they're using that as true data. And we know that that's not necessarily the best way to be looking at it, particularly with all these changes. And lastly, on the Facebook side of things, so, and this is not just on Facebook, I mean, we can kind of use this in any ad platform, but we really do believe that ROAS is kind of a bit of a dead metric. What we know is that statistical modeling is becoming way more prevalent. So there's conversion and conversion value that's been reported that's not happening. There's duplicate conversion that inflates performance. And there's simply a loss of attribution, which meaning tracking just isn't perfect. So if, as a media buyer, you were only doing Facebook ads and we were making decisions off what Facebook ads was telling me, you reported a 3 ROAS, there's a very good chance that it might not actually be a 3 ROAS, and therefore it's not a metric that we can rely on anymore as advertisers. So the problem here is that with ROAS is, just to summarize, so advertisers are really scaling ad spend when the business isn't profitable due to those inflated metrics, or advertisers are not scaling ad spend when the business is above their sort of net profit target. And that's kind of limiting ability to scale, which also has an opportunity cost. And kind of like the too long don't read version is that advertisers are really only focusing on what the ad platforms are telling them. So the solution, and this is what a lot of marketers are talking about at the moment, and something that we're starting to do more and more with, is trying to build stronger partnerships with our clients and focusing on what's called MER, or marketing efficiency ratio. This isn't rocket science, but it's the very best way to kind of look at how business is performing at any given time. And what it simply is total business revenue for the period that you're looking at divided by the total media spend across all platforms. And that will give you a number, or your MER. And what we're working with clients is to understand, what does their break-even MER need to be for us to make sure that we're always profitable and hitting their kind of net profit target. And by knowing that, we can start to make more educated decisions about when to place budgets, where to place budgets, and how to adjust budgets on any given day. So what we're starting to do is work with another company called SBO. They're like a financial company, getting access to our clients' sort of financial platforms. And this is like a summary of what's called a daily profit and loss that we're working on. It essentially looks at a target sale number for the business. So we'll set targets with our clients, like what are you trying to achieve in that month as a revenue target, and work backwards from that on a daily basis. We integrate with all the ad platforms and Shopify to pull in data on a daily basis to understand what were the actual sales that we're pulling out of Shopify. That will give us, I guess, what that MER number is. And then we can have a look at the actual marketing costs. So pulling in spend from Facebook ads, Google ads, Pinterest, whatever else it might be. And that will tell us what the marketing efficiency ratio is on a day-to-day basis. So instead, say like the before way would be like, let's look at Facebook ads. We're a 4 ROAS, we scale up budgets. If Facebook ads was telling us it was a 4 ROAS and we jumped into this daily profit and loss, but we could see that at an aggregate, we are way under the marketing efficiency ratio target, then we wouldn't be dialing things up. So it's just a better way to kind of make decisions from a media buying perspective, by looking at the total ecosystem as opposed to just what the ad platforms are telling us. So it's all about just building stronger relationships with partners, and working towards an actual business objective as opposed to ad platform objective. And then it goes on to a number of different metrics. So it looks at like cost of goods sold, which is looking at the average for the business, fulfillment costs, merchant fees, to make sure that these are all being factored in, to then at the end of this, which you can't see, unfortunately, it will have net profit. So we know in any given day, how is the actual business performing against net profit? And if it's going really well, but ad platforms are telling us it's not going great, we know that there's an opportunity for us to potentially invest more into ad spend. So this is very much a work in progress. We're rolling it out for our clients at the moment, but it's just helping us have a look at another signal. So it's not to say that we look at this and we make immediate, like there's no media buying decision to be had here. We look at the ad platform still, because that will tell us which audiences, which keywords for the most part are resulting in conversions. But this is another signal that you can blend in with the other things that you're looking at, whether it's offline conversions, your conversion tracking, Google Analytics, to make sure that at the end of the day, you're making decisions that are impacting the business in the right ways, because there's no point increasing budgets if the business isn't profitable. And on the flip side, it's almost worse to not be scaling when we're way over the targets. Just trying to get to the next slide. So yeah, really in summary, that's what I've got to present today. So really, I reckon everyone needs to kind of adapt to the current privacy changes that are happening and really get ahead of the curve to get an edge on your competition. And that can really start with tracking. So my recommendation is, yeah, use a blend of ad platform, Google Analytics, offline conversion tracking, and ultimately the business performance, which can be done with documents like MER to make better media buying decisions. And that is everything I had prepared today. So I can hand it over to Matthias, but we can definitely jump into some Q&A.
I think we almost run out of time, but thanks so much, Josh. Yeah, maybe from my end, there are already some questions. From my end, I wanted to quickly ask you, like, who are you following? Like, how do you come up with MER? Are there so like two, 3 persons you're following in the performance marketing industry, where you're learning from?
Yeah, there's probably like a few agency owners that we follow on LinkedIn that do talk about this. One is like Carl Hunt. He's from Weekend Digital, which is an American-based agency that are growing ridiculously quickly. We definitely heard about this metric through them, but we've heard it through other places as well. Jonathan Dane from Client Boost, it's another American agency. They're scaling pretty quickly as well. But yeah, so I kind of take it from different people that I follow on LinkedIn and also doing my own research. Because yeah, it's one thing to understand conceptually how that works. It's another thing to go and execute it and make media buying decisions off the back of it. But yeah, it's very much a work in progress, but it's definitely helping us in these early stages. Just have a look at how businesses are performing.
That's great. Yeah, thanks very much for sharing all of that. Do we
Absolute pleasure.
Can you, someone is asking to share the names on the chat.
I'll drop it in. No worries.
Nice. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, I got a question. Hey, Josh, it's Odin here.
Oh, mate, that's a familiar voice.
Yeah, I bet you miss having this annoying voice around.
Very much so.
Really cool, man. Really interesting to see how you guys are kind of tackling some of that stuff. Quick question on aggregated event management. You guys didn't touch too much of that. How much of an effect do you think that has, seeing as a lot of the data that we're passing back kind of comes through that one single event? Is that something you've built some strategies around with the Apple kind of options with the Facebook's kind of built in there?
Can you just repeat the start of that? I kind of missed what you said at the start there about the aggregated performance metrics.
So aggregated event management on Facebook, I know it's probably not something that they've built into Google or some other tools. Do you have you found any benefit using that in a way that's a little bit more tactical in terms of carrying through conversions? With that aggregated event management, you can only bring through one of those conversions if it's the highest priority one, obviously, with the transfer of data. So yeah, that was just a question. It was pretty simple. Have you found any tactics around using event management, or do you think that that's kind of stayed the same since pre-iOS?
Yeah, I don't necessarily know the answer to that. Sorry, Odin. Like aggregated event management's not a terminology I've heard. So I'll have to talk to you about that one offline. And maybe perhaps I can share some more value on that after the fact.
Yeah, no problem. Easy.
Oh, wow, there's quite a few questions going. Now I'm a little bit, I would need to disconnect soon. Should I just make you the host and you take it from here, Josh?
Yeah, I'll see if I can answer this question. Yeah, absolutely. Feel free, Matthew.
Yeah, okay,
no worries.
Then I would need to drop, and yeah.
I also have to drop out in a couple of minutes, so I'll see how I go answering these questions.
Yeah.
So have you received any pushback from clients asking for specific ad platform performance? Example, a client asking specifically, what's the performance on Facebook ads? Then how do you answer that? So yeah, we still report on what Facebook ads does tell the clients at the end of the day and what it tells us. So we use Windsor AI to do all the reporting from a feed perspective. So we still report on what the ad platforms tell us because there's still trends in that data, but we do marry that up against platforms like Google Analytics and like their daily profit and loss that we've been rolling out. So it's a matter of kind of looking at all three, but we do still report on Facebook ads. And then Adam said, would you have an answer on how to adapt the MER metric for B2B where customer journey can take up to a year or longer? That is a good question. For B2B, we do work with a lot of B2B companies. My understanding of how we could potentially do that for, I guess that would be more enterprise clients where that is taking a long time due to that consideration phase. So, I mean, again, if you were using, say, Gclids, and there are other variations of that CRM, it won't ever leave. So when the deal does come into the CRM, if it even did take a year for that lead to convert to an actual customer, at some stage when it does ultimately, we can pull that back in and know that was a Google ad. So from an MER perspective, that's purely for e-com. So it'd be slightly different. It would be more CAC, which is customer acquisition cost for B2B, unless it was B2B e-commerce. But yeah, there's ways that you could do that for sure. Awesome. Well, if no one else has any other questions, I really hope that this was of value to everyone. So yeah, as I mentioned, I'm from Farsiight. If this was of value to you, we're putting out a lot of video content where we're just sort of sharing tips, tricks, measurement, anything ad platform related, sort of every sort of videos 3 to 5 times a week on LinkedIn. So if this was of value to you, if you wouldn't mind hopping over to LinkedIn, our sort of LinkedIn page is Farsiight, spelled Farsiight. Go over there and give us a like, and you'll get fed with our content on a regular basis. So I really appreciate everyone's time. And yeah, if you want to reach out with any other questions, then just hit me up on LinkedIn, and would be happy to continue the conversation. But yeah, thanks so much for your time, everyone. Cheers.